Welcome everybody to this training video. My name is Scott McMillan, project lead for the IHSS Benchmark Dashboard. In this video, I'm going to show you how you can merge two different data sets, in particular, your security incident data and your workplace violence data. This is situations where if your organization requires your security staff to write two separate reports for the same violent incident, then we'll need to merge those together. So let's say you've got a violent incident that happens in your facility, security responds to it. They then have to write two reports. The first report they have to write in your security incident reporting system that your program owns and manages. And they would likely assign some sort of a category or classification to it, such as assault. But due to obligations that you might have to other programs within your organization, such as workplace health and safety perhaps, or maybe risk management, your officers might have to also write a second report specific to the various workplace violence elements of that incident. Now, the challenge you have is that the IHSS benchmarking dashboard only allows you to upload one incident data set. And within the format for the benchmarking dashboard, workplace violence is not a category, but rather a separate column where the typology is attached to the corresponding violent category, like assault. So this video will show you how to take the workplace violence typology in the workplace violence data and match it against the corresponding incident report for that same incident so that you can upload one single incident data set. If your organization does not require your officers to write a second report within your reporting system for the violence, but rather one violence report in the workplace violence system, then this video is not applicable to you in that situation. All right, now let's have a closer look at some test data on how we can merge these together. So here I have a spreadsheet that I put together, and it has two tabs. This first tab is workplace violence reports. So this data is replicating the data that you might get when you pull the data from your workplace violence reporting system. Now, it might not be a separate system entirely. It might actually be a separate module within your security reporting system. For example, I do believe OmniGo, Resolver, and possibly other ones actually have separate modules. Either way, whether it's a separate module or a separate software, it's still a separate data report. So you will pull the reports for those workplace violence incidents, and it looks something like this. Fairly standard. You've got your facility name, your report number. You would have, in this case, it would likely be the typology that would be attached to it. You've got the date and time, and you've got the location and perhaps the police involved, if that's applicable. The second tab is representative of your incident data that you would pull from your security incident system that has all of the categories that your officers would write reports for with the same columns, standard columns. What we want to do is we want to merge aspects of both of these. In particular, to align with the IHSS benchmarking dashboard, we need to create a new column for the workplace violence typology. And what we need to do then is we want to identify the security incident report in this data set that corresponds to the workplace violence report in this data set, and we want to identify the typology. So how do we do that? We do it with a formula. So I've got a formula that I've written, and it looks like this, and I'll briefly try to explain it. The first part of this is this if error, which is sort of a standard element of any if function in Excel. And basically what it does is it allows us to tell the system that if none of the parameters or criteria that I'm asking for are met, then I want you to just leave it blank. Because if you don't do this if error, then by default, Excel is going to put an error in that cell. And we don't want that. It looks messy and it could cause confusion when we're uploading our data. So that's what the if error. And it's actually these last two open and close quotations at the end that is actually what's telling the system, if none of the other parameters are met, then leave it blank. And that's what those quotations are doing. The rest of it, the key element of this is the X lookup, and then the other parameters attached to that. What this is doing is it's saying, I want you to look at both of these data sets. I want you to specifically look at the date and time of the incident column and the location column in both. And where you find an exact match, I want you to take this value in here and put it over here. So with that, let's copy that formula and see if we can get it to work. We'll copy. We're going to actually click up in the formula bar. I find it's always better to just put it directly in the formula bar. We're going to hit enter. And we are going to double click so that it goes all the way down. And you can see that we've got a lot of blanks. And that's not because the formula didn't work. In fact, it worked exactly as we wanted to. It's blank because it doesn't apply. It doesn't apply because if we look over in the category here, we'll see that none of these are violent categories. And if they're not violent categories, it stands to reason there should be no corresponding workplace violence typology. But if we scroll down a little bit, we will find that there is a match. And a quick check will prove that it worked, because if we look at the category, sure enough, it's clearly a violent category, an assault specifically. And if we really wanted, we could double check to make sure that the date and time and the location matches one of the reports in our workplace violence reports, which it does. In fact, in this case, November 10th, 2325, South Tower basement matches exactly with the first entry here. Right. So we know that that worked. We now have our workplace violence typology is now identified. It's attached to the corresponding report that was written for that exact same incident, at least insofar as based off of the exact date, time, and the location. Now, that is important to point out. The only way this works, and this formula will work, is if the officers who are writing both those reports are in fact entering the same date and time that the incident occurred and the exact same location. So it won't work, for example, if you're using the date the report was generated, because obviously they can't write two reports at the same time, so the time will not match. So very important that you try and use the actual date and the time that the incident occurred, because that should be exactly the same within both reporting systems. The last thing that we're going to do before we save this is we're going to want to remove this formula. Excel does weird things, and when you're uploading into the benchmark dashboard, it might read the formula and cause a little bit of confusion. So we need to remove that. So to do that, all we're going to do is highlight the column. We're going to right-click on the top. We're going to copy. We're going to right-click again. And we're going to paste as values, which is the second little option where you have these numbers here. And if we scroll down to where we have a match, we can see that the formula is gone. So with that, we can now save this as our, in this case, 2025 incident data. And this is now the data set that we are ready to upload into the benchmarking dashboard, where we can carry on with the process and do our mapping of our categories and locations. So I hope this helped. So again, it only works. This is specifically for where your officers have to write two separate reports for the same incident, and aligning the workplace violence typology from the one to the corresponding report in the other system. So thank you very much for watching. On behalf of the IHSS, we are extremely grateful for your participation in the benchmark dashboard. And if you have any follow-up questions or concerns, please reach out to us. Use email dashboard@ihss.org, or reach out to me directly as well, and I'm happy to help. So thank you very much, and good luck.